Hello, my loves. Welcome back to the Purpose Show podcast. Today we have a guest. I have not been doing very many guests lately, but Jen is a new friend of mine. We are in a group of women together, a mastermind, and I came across her in her message, and she's just incredible. She's so grounded. She's such a gem. She's such a light. And so she has a really interesting message for us here at the Purpose Show. I know most of my listeners are in their like 30s and 40s, some even in their late 20s. And while we do have some women in their 50s and beyond, it is not the target, the main demographic, really. And so Jen, her audience is. So she's kind of coming with a fresh perspective for us, sort of a hindsight is 2020. Let me share my wisdom with you all while you are in this younger season of life. So I'm so excited. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you so much, Allie. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm so excited to connect with you and your audience because, yeah, I feel like I'm like a time traveler, like coming back from the future to
Yes.
let you know what life looks like. I'm 52, so my kids are, I'm an empty nester. My kids are off at university, so slightly different perspective. But I really resonate with your message and think it's so important for women to learn it early. So I'm just thrilled to be part of this.
Yeah, it's really cool to like connect with you and then that we both have that like respect for each other to we can like how can we support women together instead of like these are your women and these are mine. I love that. That energy exchange is so positive and so impactful. So my loves, our goal today is to inspire you to reclaim your sense of self and really break free from societal pressures. So to kick things off, Jen, can you just tell us about what you do specifically and also your book, The Selfish Season?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Allie. Yeah, so I've worked a whole bunch of different jobs in my life. I was a banker, I have an MBA, I've done consulting work. I had a brief stint on Christian television. So I know some of what you talk about on your show really resonates with me, the guilt, all that kind of stuff.
The religious
Um,
programming,
Right?
yes.
Absolutely. And I'm in a season now where I'm doing a lot of coaching with women. So my business partner, Babe Smith, and I wrote a book, The Selfish Season, that's coming out this December. And basically, it's to help positive, motivated midlife women finally put themselves at the top of their to-do list so that they can start to build that happier, more empowered life. I think a lot of us were where a lot of your listeners are right now today. And I think we're always kind of waiting for our turn, right? We think like, oh, well, when I turn 30, I'll get my turn. Or when my kids go to school, I'll get my turn. Or when my kids go to high school, I'll get my turn. And the reality is, no one gives you your turn. And so I can tell you from, your future at age 52,
Mhm.
you really need to take your turn. And, I know a lot about neuroscience and neural paths. So, in your 50s, those paths are pretty deep, right? It's like being on a groomed ski hill or like a cross country trail with these deep embedded paths.
Mhm.
And when you have to go off the track, later in your life because you realize you're feeling stuck, maybe you're in a bad marriage, maybe your career isn't going well, it's really hard to turn out of that because those tracks are so deep. So the earlier you're actually able to, get into fresh powder to lay down those tracks, the easier it is. Now that doesn't mean there's not hope for women. Our book and the community that we're building for these, high vibration women, it follows the selfish method. It's a process that kind of leads you through goal setting. I teach a course called the Art and Science of Success at the University of Toronto. So it uses a lot of proven success principles, brain science, like all that stuff that, you love to talk about on this show. It's just that those neural paths are super deep, right? Habits are really formed. And so if you're in that newer parenting season, like stop waiting, right? And that's really why your show so resonated with me because I'm like, oh, I wish someone had told me this when I was like 25, because I've waited for another 25 years to get permission to do what I want. And again, no one's going to give that to you.
Yeah. I feel like something that I hear people say a lot is that like you don't need permission, but you have it. And what's resonated for me, and I don't know if this hits for anyone else, take it. And if not, throw it away as always. But, sometimes we do need permission, it's just that it needs to come from us
Yes. I
instead of
love
other
that.
people. Yeah,
I
like, it's
love
okay to
that.
feel that need for, like I gave myself permission. I remember where I was standing when we randomly lived in Arkansas for, like, 2 years, and it was freezing, and I hated it, and I was away from everyone that I loved and knew, and I gave myself permission to stop fucking around and start the business and stop blogging for free and start the business, and that changed my life, and I literally gave myself that permission, and even though I didn't have that verbiage at the time, that is what I did, and it changed everything, so no one is gonna come and say, "It's okay, you can do it," and if they do, like, if you don't really believe it, then your subconscious mind is gonna reject that advice because it's not congruent with what you believe at an identity level you're capable of, so you really do have to give it to yourself.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think that's such a powerful story. And I think we all have those moments when it's like, okay, I'm going to have to give myself permission because I was always waiting for, a husband or my kids and the reality is that, most people are kind of in survival mode. So they're, if it means you're not going to have dinner on the table for them, they're not going to be like, "Oh, why don't you go out and do something for
Yay.
yourself?"
Yeah.
It's just not how people are hardwired. So you have to be the one to carve that time out to put yourself on your own to-do list. And, as moms at any age, it's it's so easy to have our whole lives consumed with checking off things for other people. And then you
Mhm.
wake up one day and you realize that you're really miserable and you're burned out and you're exhausted. And it's because you haven't resourced yourself. Like the number of women who don't even go to the doctor
Mhm.
because, like, they don't feel like they have time, basic self-care. And it's really hard because, there comes a point where it's really hard to make those changes. You're locked in. Like at age, 25 or 35 or 45, you can still go back to school. Like a lot of doors are open for you. You can change careers. I mean, maybe you can't be an Olympic gymnast, but there's a lot of
Sure.
other things you can do. Whereas the older you get, doors just start to close.
Mhm.
And so, again, that's not saying there's no hope for folks in their 50s and 60s, but, the message that I really wanted to pass along, by virtue of being on your show is that, like, now is the time. Like, I have friends who sacrificed, and then their kids went off to university, and they really thought their husbands were going to turn to them and say, okay, now it's your turn. What do you want to do? How can I support your dreams? And instead, they've been, moved to remote parts of the world where they don't know anybody. He's decided to quit work and pursue some sort of a hobby. And I've had friends say to me, like, when is it going to be my turn? Well, it's going to be your turn when you take your turn.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, in our pre-interview chat, you had mentioned just the different challenges women face during midlife, like feeling irrelevant in the workplace or like navigating dating as an older woman. Actually, one of my really good friends is 55 and I'm 37. So we have this like age gap friendship and I love her. Like she's such a safe space for me and so am I for her. But she's about to enter the dating fields after being single for like 20 years. And
Right.
so she's like, "What do I say? Like, what if I how do I send a text that I don't like somebody?" And, like, it's just so interesting, and a lot of my women, my listeners, feel that way because they're coming out of a marriage and they're going into this new season, but they're also still raising their kids, so can you just
Yeah.
maybe elaborate on these struggles at different seasons of our lives and how they really impact women's sense of identity?
Absolutely. I think it's really knowing yourself. I, lived in suburbia like for a long time. And then I decided when my kids went off to university, I was going to move right downtown. So I joined like Soho House, and a bunch of my friends are in their 30s. And like, I'm
Yeah.
just absolutely loving this season. And as part of that, I got on the dating app Raya. It's just like
Mm,
celebrity dating app or whatever.
yeah.
And like, it's tough out there, right? Because there are these men who are trying to convince you that you're competing with 25-year-olds, and you just really have to know yourself
Mhm.
and have your boundaries and have this sense of self-worth that I think comes from living your dreams authentically. Like, if you feel like you're miserable and like you've, sort of lost out on your dreams, you're not going to be in a good space for dating because there's so many games being played. It did not used to be like this. Like I got, married out of university and like there were not all
Yeah.
these games and ghosting and gaslighting. Like it is a three-ring circus out there. But I think it's that really knowing yourself and having that inner confidence. And that's where, and again, I know you speak a lot to this on this podcast, but part of our book is really doing an inventory of your own skills, of your own gifts, like really valuing and falling in love with yourself. Because if you don't have that, it's hard to then have boundaries that protect this great person. Like I use an analogy of, if you go into Chanel, they have security guards because they know there's good stuff inside.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of have to make sure you think of yourself as Chanel. You are not the Dollar Tree with people being able to just run in and take their pick.
Or like Walmart with their 99-year-old security guards.
Right.
We
No.
need very fit, delicious, muscular Samoan men guarding your
Yes.
boundaries,
Yes, you are like you're Tiffany on Fifth Avenue. Like you
right?
need the best of the best. And, it's up to us to establish those boundaries because the degree of nonsense out there is really quite absurd. And I think it would be very hard on your self image. The same goes with work. At some point, older women in particular, but older folks in general, like we are seen as being obsolete. We're
Mhm.
expensive. Our skill set is seen as a little dusty. But again, it's knowing, like, okay, if the corporate world's not for me, what are my skills? How do I assess them? And let's start a business.
Mhm.
Okay, if the dating app scene is not for me, how do I go out and actually meet like-minded, normal people? Um, but it starts with self because if you don't have that very strong sense of self, and that's why we called our book and our company Selfish,
Mhm.
and the ish is in brackets because we feel a little bad being selfish, but maybe we can be selfish,
Yeah.
right? Um, but centering the self, decentering men. I know there's a big movement right now about decentering men, and that's not about not liking men. Like I love men.
Mhm.
I've probably loved men too much. It's probably my issue.
Right?
I've been married a couple of times, so
I love
I may love them a little too much. But
yeah.
for me, it's decentering them, not to say they're irrelevant, but it's to say, my needs, like, what do I want in a dating relationship? Not
Mhm.
how do I make myself appeal to this big group of people, but what do I want? What do I want in a partner? And dating should be not how can I mold myself into their world?
Yes.
It's what do I wanna do, and does this person fit into my sense of what I want my future to be? So if you
Yeah.
haven't thought about your future, it's very hard to date.
Yeah, and how could you know well, not do they like me, but switching it to do I even like them? How can you know that if you don't even know who you are or what you like or what you're looking for or what's a good fit for you and you haven't taken the time to like look back at your past relationships and like journal through it or think or analyze it and become self-aware. I think we talked about this. I think I told you this during our pre-interview chat, but my daughter is 15, just for all the listeners to hear this story too, because it just was like wild to me how the programming just gets in there at such a young age. I'm I'm very strong, I'm very successful. I'm the breadwinner in our family. My ex-husband works with my company, and he has for years. And my daughter's seeing that. And I have these conversations with her all the time. We were watching Twilight a couple years ago, and I was pausing every 2 seconds, like, that is not how things should work. This is weird. This is like a red flag. Like I was and we get into the movies
Amazing.
like it, I'm that mom.
I
And
love
so
that.
and as I was dating for the first time, I would talk to Bella and I would say like, "This is what happened." And so like immediately like sent this text, laid my boundaries and blocked, whatever it was. Like I would give her pieces of it to help her. And she recently came to me and she's been chatting with a boy from school that she likes, and she came to me and she was telling me, like, "I just didn't really like this, and I didn't think it was funny, but I just laughed to be nice, and it made me feel weird." And then I forget what else she said, but it was something that he said to her, he called her, like, a pet name or something, and she just was like,
Okay.
didn't like it, and she just pretended that she did, and she came right to me and mentioned it, and I explained to her, like, "That is centering men, and it is self-betrayal because
Yeah.
you didn't think it was funny. He should feel awkward that he's not funny to a pretty girl that he clearly likes, And he didn't even
Amazing.
ask permission to call you hun or babe or whatever he said.
Yeah.
And she was just really put off and, like, it made her have, like,
Wow.
a visceral reaction, but she suppressed it and then was, like, cute and sweet and made him comfortable while she was uncomfortable. And it's
Right.
wild that after all the talking and teaching and being around her and strength I've shown her that that programming still got in there and won.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, like, that is why you guys, like, we have to be examples, like, talk to your girls, talk to your boys, like, oh my gosh, like, these conversations are so huge for us to have with each other, but to spread down as well to our kids because they're getting this messaging, and boys get it about women.
Yes.
And girls get it about women. And it
Yeah.
yeah, and so that is what Jen means when she says decentering men. It is just not literally betraying yourself every time to make a man feel comfortable or dressing for the male gaze when you really wanna wear a fucking muumuu. Like, wear what you wanna wear, like, wear what makes you feel good. Dressing for the female gaze is so much more fun anyway.
It absolutely is. I love that. Like, your kids are so lucky to have you as a mom. Like, that's such positive messaging. And it's like, yeah, think about what you want. There was this I like old movies because I'm old. So like The Runaway Bride with Julia Roberts. And there's a scene in that which is kind of how do you like your eggs? And basically someone asks her like they observe her at a breakfast restaurant and she's always ordering eggs in a different style depending on what guy she's with. If he likes scrambled, she likes scrambled. If he likes poached, she likes poached.
Mm,
And finally, she's sort of single for a minute and he's like, "How do you like your eggs?" And she doesn't even know. And I think that, women can get to this point at any point in their lives when they legitimately don't know because again, we're so used to shaping ourselves around the needs of our families. Like we're the ones eating the extra chicken nuggets off our kids' plates because we didn't have time to kind of cook something for ourselves. And that doesn't break even when your kids go off to university unless you break it. Like we're the ones who have to break the cycles. We're the ones who have to break those habits. And it's about thinking, getting up in the morning and thinking, like, what do I want to do today? What
mm,
do I want to have accomplished by the end of the day? And that's not like your to do list of like grocery shopping. That's like, do you want to catch up with an old friend? Do you want to get to the gym? Do you, need to go to the doctor?
mhm,
It's again about having yourself on that list because no one else is going to put you on that list. And a martyr helps no one. Like
right.
being a martyr just leads to burnout. It just leads to resentment. It leads to unhappy marriages. It leads to, resentful parenting. But again, you just can't wait for someone else to put you on the agenda.
Mhm,
You've got to put yourself on that agenda. And whether you're, dating again, it's like, what do I want in a person? If you're looking for a job, right? It always feels like they have all the power, but it's like, well, what do I want in a job?
mhm,
Because, if you do your skills assessment and you look at your resume, it's like, hey, I'm actually a really good catch here, whether it's in the dating or the labor market. So I'm not going to sell myself short. I have the confidence that I can be on my own, that I can start my own business. Like, I'm going to be fine. But you can only have that set of beliefs when you give yourself permission to actually like look at your resume and build a resume. Take the time to look at your skills, take the time to journal
mhm,
about what you're really good at. And not wait for that external validation because, people tend to tell you what they think you wanna hear to do what they want, if that makes sense, right? So it's like,
mhm,
"Oh, you're such a good cook." Well, maybe you hate cooking, but people like eating, so they're gonna reinforce that.
mhm,
So if you don't like it, that's gonna be up to you to determine, I would really rather order in and go out salsa dancing because that's what brings me passion,
and
right?
that's not only okay, that's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And that's, like, martyrdom, victimhood, and self-suppression to just always be serving is going to decay your family and
Yeah.
yourself because it's decaying you. Something that you have highlighted in your brand, Jen, is how crucial it is for women to, like we're talking about, self, their own identities, their support systems, even when they have, kids that they're still actively raising. I feel like the next natural question is what are some practical first steps they can take? I feel like you're giving some, like, if you don't want to cook, don't cook, and all these things. But maybe from, like, a stereotypical perspective of a lot of, like, really common things that you see women struggling with, what are some initial steps they can take to start to kind of flex that muscle of building their own identities when they feel so disconnected?
Absolutely. I like this notion of ikigai. And so it's, if you just Google ikigai, it's like Ikigai. And it's a way of figuring out how what you're good at and what you like can sort of serve the world. Because I think most women do have this sense of, wanting to serve people. Some of that comes from, patriarchal conditioning, and some of that just comes from actual genuine love for our families.
Sure.
But too many of us are serving in areas that really burn us out. So by doing, and we mentioned it in the book, you can Google it. There's like Pinterest forums, and it's basically a Venn diagram where you'll actually sit down and think about what you're good at. So this could be academic things. Maybe you're great at like birthday party planning. We all have our skills, things that maybe people praise us for. And more importantly, when we go into that kind of flow state where, time just sort of passes so fast because we're working on this thing that we love. Maybe it's writing, maybe it's, going to fitness classes. It could be a whole bunch of things. And what you try to do is you try to figure out, what you love, what your skills are, and then what the world wants. And even better, if you want to layer in a fourth circle, is what the world will pay for, especially if you're looking at doing a side hustle. And you want to then figure out where's the overlap, right? So if you're just a whiz at planning your kids' birthday parties, um, start a business like party planning. I mean, I hate it. I'm ADHD as well. I hated planning my kids' birthday parties. I'm just not good at it. I
Mhm.
would happily pay someone to do that.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So if you can find that intersection, I find that one of the best first exercises is just really think about what you love
Mhm.
and then put it in the context of how it could help people.
Yeah, and
So it's you
the
first.
yes, exactly. You first, and then it's the support for others because we are all here to need and support each other. But the support and serving is coming from a place of being lit up.
Lit up, well resourced. It's that old oxygen mask metaphor on the airplane, right? You really
Yep.
do have to resource yourself before you can help anyone else.
Mhm.
So if you start in that place of passion, what you like, there will of course be spillover effects onto your family, and onto your friends and onto the world. But when you start in a place of like, well, they want it, so I have to do it, that's when resentment builds, and kids can really pick up on that.
Mhm.
Again,
Absolutely.
children don't want burned out mothers. It
Yeah.
may seem in the moment like they do because they're literally, especially the moms of like, I mean, God bless the women with toddlers, right?
Right.
Literally pulling on your clothes, not letting you go to the bathroom. Um, and unfortunately, though, once they're beyond toddler, we often keep that same mindset of we instantly have to react. We have to serve all of their needs. Like, yes, a baby can't feed itself.
Mhm.
Your 15-year-old can, right? They
Right.
can get dinner on the table while you go salsa dancing. And if you're a
Mhm.
happier and more engaged mom as a result of doing that, that's fabulous. Because if you're burned out at 25 or 35 or 45, 55 and 65 are gonna be really, really hard. And again, like, you think they go off to school, you don't need to parent, like, completely untrue, in
Mhm.
university, it's just a whole other set of things.
Yeah.
So,
My mom
the
always
time is
says
now.
that oh, sorry.
No, no, just the time is now.
Yeah, absolutely. My mom always tells me that she thought that the parenting would kind of stop and would subside, and not that she didn't wanna be a mom anymore, but just that it would ease up, and she's like, in many ways, it actually increased because there's bigger issues, like big life decisions, life advice, miscarriages and job losses and, cheating by the person you're dating and all these things happening where it's just like, oh my gosh, I need to go be there for my baby. So yeah, she was like one of those people that just like waited and waited and wishes that she would have showed us a better model, which I feel like she did because I'm doing that. But,
Yeah. Well,
um,
and you need to be resourced for that, right? Because if you're
uh-huh.
burned out and bitter when you're 50, and your adult kids need you, it's like if you're, in the day to day, you're exhausted, and then you get that phone call from the school, so and so's broken their arm. That's that moment where people melt down. And
Yeah.
it's not because they can't handle these crises, it's because they've become so burned out from the mental load of mothering that it's like one more thing and I'm going to break. And you never want to be at that point where if one more thing happens, right? There's a job loss, there's an unexpected bill that comes up. Like, I'm a big fan of building margin in your life,
Mhm.
money margin and time margin, but energy margin is also incredibly important. You need to have a lot of energy margins in your life so that if your family does need you, that's great. And if you've been out, with friends or salsa dancing or exercising or even having a nap, if you do get that crisis call, you're so much better resourced to help folks, right? Like, again, martyrdom does not create anything but resentment. If you're selfish, you can actually help people more in the world because you're well resourced, you're happier, you're more empowered, and you can actually, help other people's lives in a much, much more helpful way.
Mhm. What would you say to a woman who's really struggling with guilt or fear of judgment for shifting and living in a way that's, putting herself first?
I would say surround yourself with folks who are on like self improvement journeys is a big start. I know you have a community where we're building a community for women that are a bit older. So, I've always put myself in coaching containers as an example, trying to connect with other kind of high vibe entrepreneurs because there are a lot of people who will judge you. I mean, my business partner was out golfing and mentioned that she, went, I think it was to a spa, and one of the women was like, "Oh, it must be so nice to have so much time to spend on yourself." And it's like, well, yeah,
I
it
was gonna
is.
say, yes, it is, and
Yeah,
would you
it's
like to
amazing,
like, it's all
right?
a choice.
Like, we often police each other as women, and I don't know where that, I mean, I think it comes from patriarchal bullshit, but,
Of course, yeah.
but there are so many women who are on this self-improvement journey, who are, like, encouraging you to take a nap. Like, we should not just celebrate engagements and, babies. We should also be celebrating, like, "Hey, you went on a retreat, like, good for you.
Right?
You had a nap, yay," right? Like, good for you. We should be
Mhm.
when we say, women wanna lift each other up, that's a really great way of supporting your friend, is if your friend does something that is resourcing herself that's quote unquote selfish, praise her.
Mhm.
And then ask for that to be reciprocal and get in circles of people who are on that journey because it starts to normalize that self-care is very normal, that it's expected. It's just, just like we have to take in water, we have to take in food, we have to sleep. We also have to resource ourselves energetically and spiritually and emotionally.
Mhm.
And we shouldn't be made to feel guilty. So I would say, if you feel bad, talk to your friends, and if your friends make you feel worse, maybe start expanding that friend circle.
Yeah.
Become friends with people in different generations. Like you were saying, you're really good friends with someone in a different generation. They have a different perspective. I became friends with like millennials. They have a very different perspective than Gen X, which is what I am, and it's
Mhm.
it's refreshing.
Yeah.
So put yourself in circles with different people, especially if you've been in kind of one of these conservative closed down communities where women are expected to be martyrs. Yeah, if you go and like take a weekend to go to Vegas, there will be people who talk. But there's also a lot of people who are going to be in Vegas having a lot of fun, and maybe those are your new people.
You know what's so
Maybe
funny about you saying that is, a few years ago, I was finally at a point where I was kind of timidly putting my toe in the water of, like, really kind of coming out and being my real self. And I was living this way, like, I had made the decision about my marriage, and people knew about that, and that was a really big deal. But I had never dated. I had never gone to a nightclub. I didn't even know what the inside of one looked like outside of, like, a movie or something. And my man took me to Vegas, and he got us a table with, like, a sign that said, like, "Congratulations, Allie," because I had made this, like, big business decision. And there was, like, bottle girls. I'd never even seen one before.
amazing.
Oh my god, they're so hot.
The sparklers,
Yeah,
it's so
the
fun.
sparklers too. I was like, "Oh my god," and it was just this, like, the old life I was in was, like, this, like, sinful, bad, like, it was so fun and light, and I was so excited. I had never danced, like, dancing is, like, always my self-expression as a kid. I had never
Right.
danced so freely, and Sean was there,
Oh,
so I felt safe. Like, it was I cried, like, happy tears. It was
I
beautiful, and
bet. I
I
love
had
that.
I had gone to my hotel room, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I wanna spread this energy, I wanna spread this abundance. I have a story about how this made me feel," and I had a picture of me holding the bottle of champagne and smiling in the nightclub with the bottle girls, and I wrote an email about how, like, we get to write the story, we get to live our lives, we get to create abundance, and that's what, like, my message is about, and I put that picture in the email. Girl, that email split my audience down in 2 in the
Wow.
best way possible.
Perfect.
I It was like, I was just on such a high, an energetic high. I was so lit up the next morning. I was having my matcha and, like, in Vegas, looking out at the strip, like, this is such a beautiful life I've stepped into, and I felt like I had released so many chains, and I was writing from that place, so then to see the, like, bam, like, even someone on my team who's not on my team anymore was like,
Right.
"This is, just really not you, so people are alarmed." And I'm like, "Yeah, actually,
This
this
is me.
is me." And they
Yes.
don't know how to so, I don't know, I feel like I just that story is so special to me because it really was me stepping into myself and doing something that I still love to do. I am always like, "When can we go back to Vegas? When can we go back to Vegas? It's so fun."
Oh my
I talked
gosh.
about it so much, my kid wanted to go there for his birthday, so we went to New York, and went on the Big
Oh,
Apple and
yes.
swimming, like, it is such an important city for me because of the energy that I shifted into there,
Oh my gosh.
and
I
that is the thing,
love
like,
that.
people have all their views about divorce, and they're gonna project that onto you when you make that decision.
Mhm.
They have all of their views about Vegas or going to a club. You can go to a
Yeah.
club completely sober and have the time of your life. It
Yes.
has nothing to do with anything, but they're gonna project that onto you. Everybody has their own perception. Bitch, you might as well do what you wanna do and, like, go dancing, go hang out with who you wanna hang out with, go try
Yes.
different things, like, this is it. This is your
This
life.
is it.
In this lifetime,
Yes.
this is your life.
Yeah, and joy is an act of defiance for women. Joy
Mm.
is an act of defiance,
Oh,
right? Because we're supposed to suffer, right? I mean, we're supposed to suffer. I mean, some people think it was, given to us by God, this sort of place of suffering. And I find so many women are in the pain Olympics. They're like going for gold. They won't feel joy. And I'm like, being joyful is a wonderful example to your children.
mhm.
It's what we need in this world. Like, this is a troubled world. We need people who are joyful. And so, if dancing brings you joy, if Vegas brings you joy, if travel brings you joy, if pets bring you joy,
Hmm.
find a way to bring joy into your daily life
Yes.
because that energy that you can then exchange with the world, that's what brings peace. That's what brings positivity. That's what brings prosperity, right? Like being miserable, pointing at fingers at people, like it's just not a recipe. Like be joyful. And if people are not happy for you, they are not your people.
And they are also just not happy in general.
Exactly. So they can be a martyr. Let them, right? It's that Mel Robbins concept of
Yes.
let them. Let
Mhm.
them. Let them point. Let them make a trollish comment.
Yeah.
Let them gossip. I'm going to be joyful. I'm going to be too busy feeling joyful.
Mhm.
And I mean, kids want to see that. They want to
That's
see,
what I'm saying. My kid was so like, "Wow, mom." Like, obviously, I didn't, like, show them videos of the bottle girls or anything, but I was just
right?
talking about, like, "It was so cool, like, I finally got to see it, and the shows were amazing, and the food, oh my god, the food in Vegas is amazing." And there was so much, and he was like, "I wanna go to that hotel that looks like New York. I wanna go next door and be in Italy. I wanna go next door to that and be in Paris."
Right?
Like, and so it's like, that's what I'm saying, and, like, we get to write our own story. Going
Yeah.
to Vegas and going to a nightclub and getting a table does not sound like a mom of 4 who homeschooled her kids almost their entire life, but that's
Right.
the fucking point.
That
You
is the
don't have to
point.
be in the box. Make your own
No.
lines.
You make it own and S, which is the first step of selfish, is storytelling in our book
Yeah.
because you have to tell a new story about yourself. And no matter what you've done in the past, you give yourself grace, like, "Oh boy, I was a grumpy martyr for however many years." But that stops today. I'm
Mhm.
gonna figure out what I like, what lights me up, and I'm gonna do more of that. And that doesn't mean you become irresponsible. I mean, we're all still parenting and doing our taxes and, all the
Yeah.
stuff. But if you can build as much joy into your life as possible, and the time to do it is now. Like, it's not, "Well, I'm gonna wait till the new year, or I'm gonna wait till my 30th birthday, or my 40th birthday, or my 50th birthday." Do it now.
Yeah.
Like, when you've stopped listening to the podcast, what's one thing you can do that makes you feel joyful?
Yeah.
Cup of tea, watching a show, going for a walk, petting your dog, just hanging out with your kids, like, not lecturing or homework or just hanging out.
Mhm.
Like, do it, right?
There was something really small that just came to mind that I think the DMs that I get, this is just something that I feel like will help you guys. When Brian and I were still married and we kind of knew, and not kind of, we knew and talked about how we pretty much knew we were like in therapy and still wanting to make a good decision, but we knew where we stood and we were just in no rush. We're good friends. We really just had like a friendship, amicable relationship for like the last 4 years or so. And there was one thing that we realized through our therapist that we had trauma bonded a long time ago and that we were very codependent. So, one thing, like saying Jen saying to you guys, like, what's one thing that you can do to make you happy? I would even take it a step further and ask, what's one new thing that could be maybe a every once in a while routine for you that makes you really happy? During this time of my life and, the before Brian and I uncoupled, we would always do the same thing at night, and we didn't even wanna do the same thing, like,
Mm.
I I have, like, so much trauma, I
Mm.
only wanna watch, like, Seinfeld. Like, Parks and Rec, Seinfeld, like, the same thing, something happy,
Yes.
I cannot handle any new information. No.
Yeah.
And Brian, like, would wanna, like, play Call of Duty. I cannot even handle he would wanna watch, like, the zombie show or for this The Walking Dead, things
Right.
and I would be like, "Oh, I don't wanna do that." And so he would, like, succumb to me or I would succumb to him, and
Right.
one of us would be miserable. And so I started like, "You know what? Why don't you go in the living room and you play your games with your headphones, and I'll go in the room and I'll journal and have some tea and then watch Seinfeld, and then we'll just go to sleep together when we're ready."
I love
And
that.
it like, I always say about our divorce that we got divorced with our relationship the best it ever was. It was such a grounded, amicable, kind, loving decision, which is so weird because of all the bullshit around the word divorce.
Yeah.
But and that was one of the first things where I was like, I'm, like, gonna cry. It was like, "Oh my god, I'm my own person."
Yeah.
So
Oh my
sorry.
gosh. No, no, no. It's and I mean, I know, a bit about your background and it's such a bold step. But yeah, if
So
divorce
small.
is what you need, do it. Like, my kids are happy, very well adjusted kids, right? I've been apart from their dad since they were like toddlers.
Yeah.
Kids are very resilient and you're not doing them any favors. And this is if it's a toxic job, a toxic marriage, toxic friendships, a toxic family of origin. Like, you get to determine the life you lead. And I think if you start with what makes me joyful, what
Mhm,
makes me happy, and you build more and more of that in, and you kind of let the chips fall where they may. Because
mhm.
as you start to center yourself, the people who are supposed to come into your life will, and others will exit. And sometimes that can be a marriage or maybe more distance with, your biological family. And that's okay. Like, this doesn't have to be done out of hate. Like, you've just painted a story about how you can divorce out of love.
Yeah, which
But
is,
you
like,
have to
so
love
wild.
yourself first.
Yes. Yes.
That's the centering, because when you love yourself first, all of the other things will flow from that,
Mhm.
right? But so many of us are so disconnected. We're in adrenal overload and our cortisol's crazy and we're getting all these physical symptoms. And I think ultimately it's because of this detachment from self. Like,
Yeah.
we're going through these motions and we don't even know why. And so sometimes, the biggest gift you can do is to sit down and actually say, like, who am I? What do I want? What do I want my legacy to be?
Mhm.
And am I doing it? And if I'm not, like, you don't have to quit your job and file divorce and, all in the same day.
Yeah.
But every day, how do I move a little closer to myself?
Mhm.
I
I
think
love
that's That's how you know you're really we talk a lot about alignment in coaching, but
Mhm.
if you don't know what you're aligning to, it's really hard. So
Yeah.
you've gotta have that base point of, like, "Who am I? And
Mhm.
how can I align?" And I mean, I just again, I feel like I'm your future self. This is some sort of Terminator situation or
Right?
something, but it's like, I really want to impart on you that, do it now. Do it today. Like, if you think, "Well, I'll wait till the kids go off to university," nothing really changes. I thought things would happen when they went to school, to kindergarten, it would be all different, and then when they went to middle school, and then high school, and then when they could drive themselves. And the reality is, it just looks a little different,
Mhm.
right? It's like putting on a different coat, but it's still you. You
Yeah.
gotta work on the inside stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so good. Oh my gosh, Jen, thank you so much for your wisdom and your energy. This is amazing. Where do you prefer people to reach out if they want to like send you a message or follow your brand?
Yeah,
You
absolutely. They can come to selfishcompanyinc.com. You can reach me at Jen with one N at selfishcompanyinc.com. We'll be opening our community soon. That's where you can find out where to get the book, all the things, and you can link to our Instagram. And I've also just started writing on a Substack as well to kind of blog
oh,
this
good.
journey of a couple of midlife gals writing a book and starting a brand. So yeah, they can reach us there. And again, if you have, mom, aunt, anyone who's going through this, or if you're in that kind of empty nest season, that's really who we speak to. But I'm
Mhm.
just so thrilled that there are resources like Allie's because they didn't, exist when I was going through this. I was a very early mommy bloggers, one of the pioneering mommy bloggers in the early 2000s. And we were all out there just trying to figure it out in the wilderness. And the fact that you can come to a space like this and get tools and tips for kind of coaching yourself younger, like not waiting, I think is just such a gift. So thank you for this show and for the opportunity to come on and share with your audience.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jen. We will link to um the book that Jen co-authored and her resources. I will get anything that she wants to share with you all and put it in show notes. Alex.com/slash the purpose show. And I love you guys. Thank you for listening. And thank you again, Jen.
Thank you.